What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Chop and Brew. I am Chip Welton. In this episode, we are talking with the multi award-winning homebrewer Rodney Kibzey out of Portland, Oregon. Rodney has achieved the amazing feat of winning at least one homebrew competition medal in all 50 states and beyond, which he'll tell you more about. Hop in the Chop and Brew time machine. We're going back to 2018 when Brian Adams and I went to Portland, Oregon to shoot episodes on Imperial Yeast and F.H. Steinbart. Badass Brian Adams and rowdy Rodney Kibzey go way back, so we could not pass up an opportunity to visit, chat an evening away with Rodney, and drink a lot of his beers that he had in the basement. Just ahead, you're going to hear about Rodney's cross-country medal sweep, his surprisingly simple brewing and packaging setups, plus what he calls the brewing season, wherein he powers through most of his annual brewing in just the course of a few fine-tuned weeks. This guy is kind of a beast, and he lays out the logistics of doing that. Also, be sure to check out the video description below because we're going to include two of Rodney's most winningest homebrew recipes. One for a Weizenbock that actually won the Sam Adams long shot competition once upon a time, and his very popular Spanish Cedar IPA. Before we get into it, a quick reminder that Chop and Brew is brought to you with support from Imperial Yeast, whose seasonal release, Huga, is a Danish lager yeast strain perfectly built for your hoppy lagers. I have two pitches of it currently running through Artemis Pills, a lager packed full of Czech Kozbek hops as well as Sterling hops, a Dawson recipe, so you know it's going to turn out good. Video and tasting notes on that coming soon. Get your Huga yeast now before it's gone at the end of February 2023. More info at imperialyeast.com. And as always, the Patreon party people, road trip episodes like this would not be possible without their support. And for this episode, Patreon supporters specifically have access to bonus footage from our conversation with Rodney, in which he goes a little more in depth on the brewing process for a couple of his favorite recipes, as well as this really interesting discussion about carbonation and the pros and cons versus fast and quick versus low and slow when carbonating a beer for the effect both on flavor and the packagability for entering contests. So help Chop and Brew get back on the road, enjoy bonus content, show some love at patreon.com/chopandbrew. And without further ado, here's Rodney. Hey everybody, welcome to Chop and Brew. We're in Portland, Oregon on the southeast side. Southeast side. We are here with the one and only Rodney Kibzey. High five! Man, tell the people what you are. Tell the people what your resume is.
Beer.
Yeah. He's won the Sam Adams long shot twice. You've won plenty of things, but the most awesome thing that I want to talk about in the very brief time that we have while we're sober is you have won a medal, a homebrew comp medal, at least one in all 50 states.
And DC.
Man!
This just blew it up, right?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to do, we were coming into town to do episodes on Steinbart and Imperial, and I was like, dude, we got to go hang out with Rodney. We know him because we're upper Midwest kids. Tell us, like, how do you win that many? Not how you win them, but like, what's your strategy when you enter? Why did you have this idea? Did you intentionally do this? The 50 state idea?
Yeah, I would say that the 50 state idea came about was at one time somebody made a comment to me. It's like, oh, you probably won a medal in all 50 states. And I went and looked and I thought maybe I did. And I realized that I only had like about 16. I just won a lot in 16 states, but I wanted to see what people perceived perception of what they liked in beers in different parts of the country. Certain styles. And I found out they like a lot of German lagers in the southeast. Like, I cleaned house in states like Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Arkansas.
With lagers?
Yeah. And especially like German lagers, like Rauch beers, not just like
really?
Pilsners, but like Weizenbocks and beers that you wouldn't think would be.
Yeah, a route beer is a very divisive beer.
Yeah, that's an opposite end of the spectrum, like compared to like Pilsners.
I didn't think about that as I thought about that question. I figured it's 50 different beers. Like, how many different beers are in that subset of ones that won medals?
I was all over the radar.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not like on the East Coast, I like CDAs, or black IPAs. My Cedar IPA, which you guys just had, that was another one. It just seems like the beers that I've had success with were what people liked in other parts of the country. But I do like to challenge myself by making new beers, and so like this beer I made is a Munich Dunkel. I've never made this before. I love my German, beers, be it lagers or ales. And, this is the first time I made it, and the first time I entered a competition, and it's placed in the first round of nationals. And so, so it's like, I like to challenge myself and enter in competitions, but just see people get excited about them or enjoy them, or you get the results. That's more reassuring. I don't need more ribbons and medals. And it's not being arrogant or anything about it, but like I have boxes and bags full of them in the basement. It's not about that. It's about seeing people get the enjoyment they get out of it.
Do you think people like in Alabama, Mississippi like that style just because it was different, fresh or new?
It might have been because they don't have that choice. They might, maybe because of distribution, or there isn't that much interest to get Rauch beers in that part of the country because, financially it doesn't make sense to send beers there that they're not going to sell. So to get something that's very fresh, and I like to try to be as authentic as I can to be in traditional styles, and to get that in a competition, then there's that is the hidden wow factor.
Did that help you with your strategy moving forward?
It wasn't really a strategy.
No?
I just made sure I sent what I thought was my best beers. Being a BJCP judge, I judge my own beers. I'm my harshest critic, and so I make sure that I send them what I think is the best thing. Now, when I get results back that aren't so good, then I'm a little surprised. But that could be the counter factor, or the other the other edge of the sword that people don't know what a traditional Rauch beer is like, and they'll be like, oh, it's just too smoky.
Right, this beer is smoky.
It's like a briquette, right?
Do you ever get discouraged with low score shots?
No.
Okay.
No. Like I said, I know what I send into competitions because I've been doing this for 16 years, and I've been a judge for almost just as long, and so when you judge beers from homebrewing to professional competitions, you know what beer should be like. If you haven't by now, then maybe you shouldn't be doing this. But so I really focus in on making sure I send my best stuff forward, but I also think that when I'm brewing it too. I think all the way down to the nth ingredient. And like your question you asked me about the Homebrewers Conference, what I'm talking about, and I'm talking about flavor profiles. Well, what makes up a flavor profile in a beer? Well, understanding down to the lowest denominator, the ingredients, understanding all the ingredients, how they work together, and what they'll produce in an end product. I think about like each ingredient. Like I think malt is the backbone of your beer. That's what keeps it up, what holds it up, and I think yeast is the DNA of your beer. It can give you, little nuances, and hops are your character. And you can have a lot of character, or you can have a little.
Do you worry about water at all?
Here. Yeah. I mean, I'm so lucky to be probably like in the best place for water, other than like if we weren't in
St. Paul, Minnesota. But what?
But it's all frozen right now.
It's all frozen water. We're making ice.
We use ice.
We're making ice block.
When we brew, we make ice.
We're icing our ice block with ice. But your question about water is the water here is ultra soft, and it was probably the biggest learning thing I've learned moving from the Midwest out here is I need to harden that water, because the water was Lake Michigan water out of Chicago.
It's got a lot of mafia bodies in it, right?
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
But yeah, it's very hard water, and so your hoppy beers weren't the same. So, lesson learned.
So talk about the long shot, just real quick. You won it in 2007, and we think 2010?
Or 11.
Or 11? It said 11 on the bottle, but I
It
didn't
was
know.
3 years apart. I know that much.
7.
And your first one,
10.
It goes to 11. It goes to
11.
It's one more.
Whatever.
Your first one was a very early rendition of a black IPA Cascadian
No, the
Dark
first
Ale.
one was Weizenbock.
Oh, was it Weizenbock? Okay.
Which is one of the first beers I ever brewed.
Really?
And continue to brew. I brew that beer every year. It's my ode to Aventus or Aventinus or however you pronounce it. Yeah, so the first one was a Weizenbock, a dark Weizenbock.
And then a dark IPA, which at the
CA,
time you think was
a black IPA.
fairly early in the game.
For homebrewers, I didn't know anybody that was making one.
In your head, had you just made it up, or did you have a roadmap from one of these early pioneers of that style?
Oddly enough, I can almost remember the day that I judged the competition, and it was the Chicago Beer Society has their Spooky Brew competition, and they had a category called Witches Brew, which were beers only made by women. Mm-hmm. And so I got to judge it, and there was a CDA and there a black IPA, and I was like, wow, this is really good. I should make one. And that's
And you
where
just reverse engineered it, or you asked that person to send you?
No, I just reverse engineered it in my head. I just took a typical, my typical IPA base recipe, and then said, well, what is the dark malt that really does it? You know, I'm not out to make like an American stout,
Right.
but I do make American stouts. I have one downstairs too.
Yeah. There's 12 beers.
How many beers?
12.
It's
We're
one
slowly-
more than 11. It goes to 12.
We're slowly making our
12
way.
beers.
Yeah. But yeah, to knowing what that key ingredient was to give you that roasty like characteristic, but not roasty. And once you figure that out, and I think at the time I just looked at certain hops and ingredients I had, and I went a little bit bigger than what I normally would. And somebody's like, "Wow, that's a lot of craft malt." I'm like, "Oh, okay." and same thing.
As you were brewing it, or as they judged it?
After I told them, what I put it in. Like, wow, it seems like a lot. I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah, but
Trying to
taste
make
it.
a black IPA,
Yeah,
man.
taste it. What do you think? You think it's a lot? Yeah. So yeah, it was a fun little, the new things, like I said, trying making new beer styles, challenging myself, pushing myself outside of my comfort zone.
Explain your setup in the basement.
It's not a setup. It's all over the place.
Well, yeah.
Homebrewer.
You're
Yeah.
spread up. You're spread up.
Well, I have a saying about this, and everybody asks me, like, oh, I need to brew with you. I need to see your setup. You probably have an elaborate setup. I'm like, no, I have a setup that works for me. If it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so what I've been doing over time is that's how I did it, and over time I'll adjust some certain things and tweak it, but my three-tier system is the top of a freezer chest, a turkey fryer in the ground. But you know what? It works.
With a ventilation hood,
Oh yeah.
hard-wired, hard-lined natural gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all it's all on a concrete floor with a drain.
And water.
So back to the 50 states. Once you kind of had this mission, 51 provinces of America.
I do have Canada and the UK too.
Do you?
Yeah.
What'd you
Wow.
win in UK?
They have a competition. He's going to give me a look now, but they have a competition the day after Thanksgiving called Black Friday.
Oh, hell no.
But they only take dark beers.
Okay.
So it's probably like this Munich Dunkels or American Stouts.
How much was the shipping on that entry?
It was probably $100 or
Oh,
so.
shit.
And
That's
that
what I'm
was,
talking about. At a certain point, you're not just brewing, time, ingredients invested. You are now Alaska, Hawaii, UK. I imagine these are not easy competitions, cheap competitions to enter.
Alaska wasn't that bad,
Yeah.
surprisingly. And I'll tell you what, they have a competition where they send you a cash prize, like $500.
What?
Yeah, and And so one year I got second best of show. I'm like, oh, I just missed it. Uh-oh.
She looks at the camera. He looked at the camera.
Here comes the warden.
He's like, what y'all drinking?
Here, show him what you do to beer. Show him.
Does he have
Do you
some?
like it? Watch. Come on, Stewie.
Oh,
show
that's
us.
too bad.
Joey.
Charlie P. My dog hates beer, but I
No,
want to see a cat drink beer.
He won't drink it.
Oh, what's he gonna do? Just knock it off like an asshole? What
Normally he'll try to bury it.
do you mean? Like,
He'll like paw like he's burying it. He's not sure. He's like, he's got cooler hair than me.
How many black people come to your house?
Counting you? None.
damn, blooper reel. Oh, he's like over in the picture though. So we're on to another beer. Rodney's
Oh, we're
Route
live?
beer.
Oh, we're live.
beer.
I mean, we're live.
Ethan showed up.
Yeah.
Brian seems to think we're gonna drink all 12 beers on camera. I don't think that's gonna happen.
This is 4. Well, wait.
We're
we
halfway
gotta double
there.
back then, don't we?
But I wanted to ask, so through all your experience of entering these competitions over a long time, what did you learn, not necessarily about your beers, but about judges in different regions? Being nice.
Oh yeah.
No,
I mean,
just
I'm a judge, so I understand that. Sometimes it's hard to gauge on the experience of some judges. I mean, you can see up and down the ladder from high rank to ultra high rank to very low rank. I think what it really comes down to is getting adequate feedback. More or less. The score is a score, but the feedback is the most important thing. And if the score matches the feedback.
Does it annoy you when it doesn't?
What
When the
annoys
number's
me-
low and the feedback's high or vice versa?
What annoys me is when there's very little writing, but you lose like 31 points.
Okay.
So it's like
They're not explaining why.
you lose 31 points. It's like, well, I got a 29 out of 50, but how did I always think of how did I lose, not how did I gain. Maybe that's more of an optimistic way than a pessimistic
Well, especially
way.
with competitions where it's style based, like clearly
Yeah.
there is a model you're reaching for. So if you have a high score, theoretically there might not be a lot of writing.
Yeah. I'm not saying
But
everybody should
knocking it a bunch, kind of you're saying like,
Yeah.
tell me what's up.
Yeah, well, what is it dinging for? Like, if you're not saying that it's got diacetyl or an infection or acetaldehyde or all the major flaws of a beer, if it's out of balance, yeah, I understand that, but then you should write that. That's my biggest burn. It's if they don't say anything like that, then I'm sorry, you're not doing your job. There are people that I hear that if you enter competitions, and this I've heard in the past, like, they weren't happy with the results, and they'll say, "Oh, well, my buddies say it's the best beer in the world," or my homebrew shop owner says that I make amazing beer, and I'm like, "Oh, well, maybe he wants you to buy more product."
Right.
So I mean, if you enter repeat competitions and you have success, then yeah, your beer is good. But if it's inconsistent, then it's inconsistent. But I don't. If you're happy drinking it and you think it tastes good, you don't need to enter competitions and drink it. There's no rhyme or reason of entering them. And sometimes I wonder when I judge competitions why people enter them, but I do understand for feedback.
Well, yeah.
Boy, it can be rough sometimes, but
Yeah, early on I entered everything I brewed, just like, oh, I think I'm gonna.
See,
When I
what's
look
the-
back at those comments, I was like, these people are so nice, man. Like, putting such a silver lining on it.
Yeah.
it's so rich and intense. But
Sorry.
my child.
Sorry.
I've never heard a sneeze like that
Yeah.
before in my
I
life.
was trying to keep it
It
quiet.
sounds like someone like
Like a ping.
snaps
Yes.
a squirrel's neck or something.
Delete.
What is your most award-winning beer? Like, what beer holds the most medals, awards, winnings?
Probably the Weizenbock.
Really?
Yeah.
And does that, I guess that kind of begs the question about entering styles that don't get entered a lot. Do you do that
I don't.
intentionally, or is
No.
that completely unrelated? Okay.
No.
Because some people will play that numbers game, right? They'll, especially now that like new guidelines come out, they'll be like, oh, well now there's Kentucky Common, there's Grisette, there's, if that's how you say it, and there's, now you can enter these categories and have
No competition.
mathematically a better chance of winning. But you never played that.
No.
You went for beers you wanted to brew because you're gonna have to drink them, and also send 4 bottles to Spain.
Spain.
Yeah.
Alaska.
Or New Zealand. We're close to that now.
Yeah.
No, I don't, I know he's going to like this comment, but the cream will always rise to the top. Even if it's a cream ale.
Yes, it will. What are we talking about?
But no, it will stand, the beer will stand above the rest. You will notice it. Being a judge, you will notice it when you taste it. You're like, wow, somebody turned the light switch on. Like, this is like uniquely different. And my biggest focus on making beers is balance. You have to get that balance. Everybody's like, more hops. And I'll joke about more hops than anything and everything. But if you don't have that balance, then it's not going to go far.
Forgive my competition ignorance, but like,
That's cool.
you keg most of your beer,
Mhm.
and so then do you bottle it like at, like when you're done brewing, you bottle it and bottle condition it and then submit it, or you bottle
Maybe I should save that for your video and show you how that's done. Everybody will be like,
Do you just bottle it from the keg?
yeah, but I have a piece of racking cane hose
Uh-huh.
that goes over the Cobra tap,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes into the bottle.
I've done that before.
Yeah.
The poor man's beer gun.
Yeah. I've won beer guns and sold them. I don't.
They are a pain.
John Blakeman, y'all.
Well, yeah, but it goes all the way back to what I said. If it works for you, then it works for you. If it doesn't, then don't. Well, it's worked for me continuously, and that's how I've filled all my beers. The one downfall I find that it impacts, and I feel that if you ever make these beer styles, you should truly bottle condition them, is Belgian beers.
Really?
You want those very tight, fine bubbles that give you that effervescent. It's not the same when you go from keg to a bottle to competition.
Welcome to Supply Management with Rodney Kibzey, who has 12 beers on tap in 3 freezers in his basement. Tell us how this works.
Okay. In a nutshell.
In a big nutshell.
So most of the he's locked in. Okay, so to get your question, most of the brewing I do, I call brewing season. People think it's kind of weird, but that's what you do when you live in the Midwest and it's so cold, and that's all you're gonna do in the mid. If you don't live near a lake and ice fish, then you make beer. You make a lot of it. So my brewing schedule was always like December, January, February, and it's actually gotten shortened because I have 5 primary fermenters now instead of 2. But so what I would normally do in a normal brewing process is I would brew all my lagers first, and then they would go in all the freezer chests and go through the process of fermenting and then lagering. And so once those, like in this case, I have enough space to do 6 lagers at one time. So once all 3 freezer chests are filled with the 6, I'll brew my first ale. And by the time I brew that first ale, ferment that, and I'll brew an ale every week after that.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And so by the time that first ale is ready to keg, that first lager is ready to keg. And then after that, every week, a beer is kegging. Actually, 2 beers are
And
kegging.
then raise also beyond just kegging a lager means you can now up the temperature in said. Well, no, because there's 3 other.
I would
at least
always
1 other lager.
Well, the nice thing
Yeah,
is I have three chest freezers. So the first couple that go in there are going to be at the 50-55 range for fermenting, and then I'll have another one ready to go to lagering, and so then I'll just start daisy chaining them in. But the nice thing is once that first ale's done, that first lager's done, and they're all ready to keg. And then after that, every week I'm kegging 2 beers at a time. An ale, a lager, an ale, a lager, an ale, a lager.
Wow.
And so within 6 weeks, this year I did 12 beers in 6 weeks. So I was, with the holidays and everything, I was doing I think I did 3 batches over the Christmas holiday, or maybe 4. But, like I said, the weather's crappy.
Then you don't brew
Dark.
it then?
Yeah.
Till fall?
Well, I'm actually
You'll
brewing
brew
next
it.
Friday,
Well,
but
yeah.
that doesn't count.
Because you have a seminar at the conference
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
entered, yeah.
And you 2 drunks are here, you're gonna drink all my beer, so I might have to make more.
Number 6.
All right, my glass is empty. Rodney, we have at least 8 more beers in the basement to get to. The people don't need to see that.
Yes, we
Or
do.
maybe they'll see it on Brian's little mini camera. But either way, thanks for having us.
Oh, no problem. Anytime. Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers. Ethan.
Ethan.
Ryan. Comp for comp.
What?
What's your play out music?
It goes.
Is it like Funky Cold Medina?
It should
could be.
It should
Oh.
switch up.
If you want.
Should be Wu-Tang.
Brew tank.
Wu.